Northern Lights and delights, and the goal and prize, and where to point your eyes. It's Rhyme and Reason 942.
Here's your rhyme and reason. Oh, yeah.
Hey there, Tony here, and I'm going to do the same thing in this episode of the Rhyme and Reason podcast that I did last time because it seemed to be pretty well received. I'm going to share a couple of stories with you, and I'm going to get right into it. The first one starts off with Finar and Sammy. They were what you might call fast friends. Well, I certainly would anyway, because that's an old and established way to describe a solid friendship built on mutual trust. And only a solid friendship could have done what they did. Keep in mind now, every word you're about to read is based on hand-me-down information, so you know what that means. Yep, rock-solid data with no room for mistakes. Okay, imagine if you will, and you will because you can, ships full of Vikings. Can you see them? Good. Now imagine the bluest, greenest, coolest, cleanest lights in the world, the Aurora Borealis. Yeah, there you go. See them flicker and they're dancing in the northern sky? Just like the light of God's love. Finar and Sammy saw those same lights as they jumped onto the shore of Funderburk. And they were instantly hypnotized. And I mean actually hypnotized. Neither one of them could move a muscle. And none of their shipmates could even move them. In fact, the only parts that moved on either one of them were their eyes. And their eyes followed each flickering dance of the lights of the Aurora Borealis, sort of like the pendulum of a grandfather clock, only quicker. All right, now here's where the story gets a little blurry, because some say Finar and Sammy never moved again. And they say the two of them eventually petrified into stony statues. But others tell another tale. And I tend to believe those others because they're the older, wiser ones. They say Finar and Sammy were rescued by angels of light. Apparently, the angels of light flew down and hovered just in front of Finar and Sammy's faces and gently placed their hands over the two guys' eyes. And as fate, or something even better, would have it, Finar and Sammy were immediately released from their hypnotic trance. And at that exact same time, the angels of light disappeared. The rest of the crew and the crowd from town cheered. And the two men were totally surprised by that reaction because they didn't even realize they had been hypnotized. I'm telling you, it was the craziest thing. Sadly, no one thought to record any of it on their phones or tablets. But don't think too badly of them because those devices weren't even invented yet. But that story was passed down for generations, and everyone kept their own version of the story in their own hearts. That way, they could explain to kids and grandkids how their beautiful homeland was named. And to this day, Finland is a place of beauty and wonder, with a positive reputation. The northern lights shine as brightly there as they ever did. In fact, if you get a chance to visit, be careful not to stare into them. You don't want to end up like Finar and Sammy. Unless you enjoy a solid friendship with someone who will help you get free. I'm just kidding. If you ever go to Finland, stare as long as you like at those lights. And you could even enjoy some wonderful conversations, rhymes, and reasons in the background as you do. Because I received a very interesting email about your old buddy Tony here. And it said, I have some cool information that might interest you. Your podcast, Rhyme and Reason with Tony Funderburk, has good performance in Apple Podcast rankings in the last 30 days. Position 68 in the category Christianity in Finland. And position 164 in the category Religion and Spirituality in Finland. How cool is that? That was from a podcast monitoring service, and they send out notices when your podcast does well. So, who would have guessed? My Rhyme and Reason is enjoyed in the land of Finar and Sammy. It reminds me of a rhyme I wrote to go with a beautiful picture of the northern lights. It's called When Angels Sing. When angels sing from Finland's skies, Aurora Borealis eyes perceive a glass kaleidoscope of crystal lights lit up by hope. The angels send a message through the frozen night of opaque blue and bid the world to come behold this place of peace, this crown of gold. So if you hear a rustling wing, be set to go when angels sing. As you call it a day today, be sure to thank the good Lord for the angels and the beautiful lights and colors, and most of all for faith, hope, and love. And don't forget to add Chris and Themum to your prayers. Who are they, you ask? Well, I'm glad you asked. They're part of the next story. Chris and Themum woke up to a thunderstorm filled with bright flashes of lightning. Thank goodness they had taken extra time to secure their tents and position them for protection, because the thunderstorm turned into what Uncle Paulo would describe as a real frog drowner. But they weren't going to let a little rain put a damper on reaching the goal for the day. Because the goal for the day was the ultimate hiker's prize, the summit, the peak. A couple more vertical miles, and they'd see the tip top of the goal they'd talked about for a long time. And they both thought about that as they fired up the little backpack grill to make breakfast and coffee. Neither one said anything. Chris had pointed out before they even started their climb that he wasn't a morning talker. And Themum said he just wasn't a morning person, period. So that worked out. Even though it sounds funny to say it, they could just enjoy the mountain sounds in silence. After breakfast and a jolt of adrenaline, thanks to their Italian roast coffee, the guys gathered up their gear to get ready to press on. And as most climbers, the honest ones at least, as most of them will tell you, they didn't even fully understand why they pressed on. Because the thin air increased the challenge with each step up in elevation, so it wasn't like it was just a walk in the park. But when you set a goal, you got to keep your eyes on the goal, right? Otherwise, your mind and your aching muscles can conjure up all kinds of reasons to turn back. And Chris and Themum certainly faced those distractions way up there above the tree line. But the awesome beauty of the summit, bathed in the orange, red, yellow glow of the morning sun, that urged them forward. After a few more switchbacks, the trail turned considerably narrower and rockier. As they approached a sharp turn next to a wind-worn tree trunk, Themum felt a pebble in his hiking boot. So he stopped to lean on the tree trunk for support and remove it. But just as he started to lift his foot to unlace the boot, his other foot twisted slightly on another rock, and his hand slipped off the tree trunk, and he tumbled off the edge of the trail. Chris had just made the sharp turn ahead of him when he looked back to see Themum disappear over the edge. And as you can well imagine, he dashed back down the trail to where his friend had fallen out of sight. He was afraid of what he might find, or not find. But he quickly calmed that fear with faith. "Themum!" he yelled out. And thankfully Themum replied, "I'm right down here. Good thing there was a shrub to break my fall, but it's pretty small, and I don't know if it can hold me for long." So Chris answered back, "Okay, don't worry. I'll help get you back up here." And with that promise, Chris quickly looked around for something to hand down to his friend. There wasn't much to choose from, but he did find one solid limb about 4 feet long that looked like it had fallen off that wind-worn tree. Then he carefully approached the edge of the trail again. "Okay, buddy, I'm going to hand you a branch to grab onto. Can you do that without falling?" Themum answered, "Yeah, I think so, but I think we'd better hurry. The roots of this shrub seem to be shifting around a little bit." So Chris grabbed onto another shrub with his left hand and lowered the branch down to his friend. And it was a good thing the branch was about 4 feet long, because they needed every inch of it. "Now we got to sync up just right, buddy," Chris told Themum. "When I pull, you got to get the best footing you can and push at the same time. Are you ready?" Themum dug his right hiking boot into the ground and answered, "Ready." "We're one unit, one force. Keep your eyes up here. On 3. 1, 2. And they both grunted out, "3." Chris pulled the limb. Themum pushed into the ground and reached up to grab another root. And they repeated those moves a few times more till Themum was safely back on the trail. They both laid there in the warm sunlight for a little while, breathing deeply and saying silent prayers of thanks. Because they had combined their efforts into one force, they got the job done right. In case you're wondering, yes, they did go on to the summit. And they enjoyed reaching the goal they had put together weeks before. There were selfies and pats on each other's backs, plus they had a nail-biting adventure story they could share with their kids and grandkids. Aren't you glad you don't have to rescue anybody off a mountainside today? And aren't you glad you can just share stories with kids and grandkids the easy way, and that's just by going to the Rhyme and Reason Bookshop. That's rhymeandreasonbookshop.com, or go to tonyfunderburk.com and look for the Rhyme and Reason Bookshop. Yep, do that today and join a growing band of believers who enjoy my books and daily rhymes and songs and videos like "I can see a dip in the mountainside where the wind shakes the pines like a rattle. But no matter where I roam or ride, I dream best in the cool, windy saddle. That does it for this episode of the Rhyme and Reason podcast. As always, remember there is such power in the power of God's love.
Is